What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Mets Central. This is Mets Central podcast, episode 48, where the New York Mets take 2 out of 3 against the Sacramento Athletics. Obviously playing in a minor league ballpark. Another series win, as I just mentioned. But yeah, take 2 out of 3. Currently 10-5, the record through 15 games. Currently first in the National League East as well. No, it's early, but it's always nice to see the Mets sit atop of the division and one of the top teams in the National League so far in terms of record. Look, obviously, it was good to take the series win. Obviously, there are a couple concerns here or there with obviously the offense still is a little bit hit or miss through the start of the season. Obviously, we're going to talk about Edwin Diaz and his struggle so far through the season. But yeah, look, like I said, good to be 10-5, sit atop the National League East. But yeah, now the Mets head into Minnesota for another 3 game set before they head back home. Evan, how we doing?
Yeah, feeling somewhere in between with the fact that I'm happy with the record. I'm a little aggravated with the way this series played out. To be truthful with you guys, because of the fact that I get the offense when you look at just the total runs, it pops out like the two wins. Of course, obviously that one loss just unacceptable, but. There are some disappointing performances in here, considering the fact that they were going into a minor league ballpark, which like we said, this is the time for the offense to get going, and just not enough guys did. There's really only one guy that was consistent throughout the series for the New York Mets in that lineup, and that was Brandon Nimmo. Outside of that, just not enough consistency there, and it's a shame. Obviously, the biggest disappointment being Juan Soto, not performing that great this series. And to be truthful, it pissed me off. Like I'm not gonna sit here and lie. It's again, I'm gonna emphasize this because I know what you're gonna say, that it's not worth wasting our breath on worrying about Juan Soto, which you're right, because he's going to be better. He is just a generational talent. But it is infuriating watching him hit into ground balls nonstop the entire series. And he's definitely got to be better going forward. You needed consistency from Alonso a little bit. But either way, again, they took 2 out of 3, which is the most important part. And I will reiterate the positive, but also negative that I've been pointing out. And that is they're winning games despite the offense not performing the way that we know that they could. So when this offense gets going, you have to imagine that this team's going to be virtually unbeatable. Obviously, every team is beatable, but you know what I mean. They are going to be just a machine when this offense gets going. It's just unfortunate that, we're 2 weeks into the season now and we're just not seeing enough consistency. And I said this in the chat for Mets Weekly. Uh, there's no identity with this offense right now. There really isn't. It's just kind of more the same what we saw last year, where we are pissed off for most of the ball game. They score in 1 or 2 innings, and that's pretty much it. Like maybe they'll sprinkle a run here and there in a couple other innings, but it's just not enough. Like when you look at their numbers with runners in scoring position in this series, it's not great. When you look at it in each individual game, it's not great. So again, and the only thing I will say is that if you want to look at it through the lens of the positive lens here, like I said, there is what I said before, that this offense is better. The other positive is that when you look around the league, like the Angels are a top offense in baseball right now. We know that's not lasting. I'm just looking purely off home runs. The Philadelphia Phillies are sitting in the lower half of rankings right now. Their offense is way better than they are performing right now. And then even the Padres, too, are in the lower half. So they're another offense that, again, underachieving despite the record. So those are the only positives but negatives. But we got a lot to get into with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously people are going to talk about Juan Soto and him, not really firing on all cylinders yet. And obviously, if the Mets want to be a quote unquote top World Series contender, obviously going to the playoffs, and we hope they do make the playoffs, and I do think they will. But, if they're going to get in, Juan Soto is going to be a huge part of why this team is going to win a World Series. And yes, listen, as of right now, he's not playing to the expectation that we expect from him. But I will say this: I can't just sit here and Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I'm a little bit frustrated because I want to see the power. I want to see Juan Soto constantly driving runs. But as of right now, they're winning games, and you know, part of part of me is like, with superstar players, you kind of have to go about them a different way. Like you kind of just have to let them be and just let them do their own thing a little bit, because it's sort of like the same thing like with Francisco Lindor and his slow starts, right? Like obviously we know that Lindor's a slow starter, so us getting on him for being a slow start, like it's not going to do anything when we know that eventually he's going to turn it around. And so far, after his two slow series in Houston and Miami, he's been pretty solid. You know, in the two series against the Blue Jays and the Marlins at Citi Field, and then he had a solid series in Sacramento also. So for me with Juan Soto, is it a little frustrating to see that he only has one home run so far and only four RBIs driven in? Yeah, it is, but I know that he's going to turn it around. We both know that there's going to be a point in the season where Juan Soto is going to be up there, and it's pretty much going to be an automatic hit or automatic extra base hit every time he's up there. And look, as of right now, he's still going up there. He's still drawing walks. He's still getting on base. He's still a threat. I mean, even with him not firing all cylinders yet, opposing pitchers are still intentionally walking him a ton of times up there. So he has a ton of respect, anytime he's facing opposing teams and opposing pitchers. So I'm not too worried. Like I said, is it frustrating? Yeah, but we all know that it's only a matter of time before Juan Soto is going to break out. And listen, and we have evidence behind that, because in his short time so far in the major leagues, 19 years old, won a World Series, hasn't won an MVP, but he's been the catalyst of a lot of offense so far that has gone to the playoffs and has made deep runs so far. So, yeah, like obviously a little frustrating, but I'm not too worried as a whole.
Yeah, and Brian saying in the chat here, as long as he's drawing his walks, I won't waste time with being concerned. Listen, again, yeah, I want to reiterate that my point is not me being concerned. It's more just the fact that what Matt said too. Like it's just frustrating that right now you're just not getting it. And the thing that's annoying me the most is that there's a lot of double play balls, which I know that he lucked out with a bit with the A's defense being poor now and then, every now and then, but just watching him hit into consistent double play balls is definitely frustrating right now. But I'd be saying the same thing with any player because fucking double plays are the worst.
I will say this though, because I've been kind of thinking about it over the last couple days. I do think that when the Mets start to play better opponents and they play against and they face better pitching staffs, I actually think that's when we'll see Juan Soto explode and take off. And my reasoning is that right now, when you take a look at the pitching staffs, apart from the Blue Jays and the Astros, for example, like Juan Soto's faced a lot of not great pitching staff and not great bullpens. I mean, obviously the A's they're solid, but when you take a look at their bullpen, not a bunch of guys that that you look at and say, "Ooh, like I'm concerned facing." Apart from a guy like Mason Miller, obviously the Marlins, that team, apart from Sandy Alcantara, is just filled with AAA pitchers and minor league pitchers. And yeah, and a lot of the times when you look at Juan Soto at bats, like they're not giving him a ton of pitches to hit, and one, that's because they're scared of him, and like I'm not gonna let Juan Soto beat me. That's fair, and he's drawing a lot of walks. But I do think that when we see the better teams and the better pitching staffs face Juan Soto, and they're more willing to challenge him, I think Soto getting more hittable pitches to hit. I think that's the time that we'll see Juan Soto really explode and take that next step offensively.
I could definitely see that happening, and you know, I'd love that. And I think that also just in general, he is a guy that rises to the challenge when it is big moments and stuff. So let me just answer a couple more things in the chat here. Fire Chavez. This I still won't disagree with. Like I co-sign this. I will co-sign this all the damn time. I don't care about the numbers that they had last year offensively and how they were considered good offensive numbers. A lot of like most of the praise that we heard last year with the offense came from about JD Martinez being a big help in that clubhouse. So like it's never Chavez getting the praise. We don't have to go in circles there. I mean, we're going to talk about just the plate approaches and stuff throughout the episode, but yeah, Chavez definitely is an issue. And then Elvin saying here, in my opinion, the Mets need to win the division or there is no playoffs. It's early. I get that why you say that because the National League right now looks like, a lot. There's a lot of competitive teams there, a lot of teams with double digit wins already compared to the AL. So I get why you're saying that, just because, especially the NL West right now is just a bloodbath with four really just elite teams right now. Like the Diamondbacks are 2 games above 500, and we all know that they are way better than that record, but it's going to be hard to get more wins when you're in that division. So I get why you're saying that, but time will tell. Like it's too early to look at standings in that regard. But yeah, let's talk about the games that happened because again, there's a lot to unpack here with this series in Sacramento. So game one, Griffin Canning on the mound against JP Sears. JP Sears. So in terms of this game, like I said, they get a hit in the first inning. It is a Pete Alonso single. Just nothing, of course, comes from it. Brandon Nimmo, though, in the second inning would hit a solo shot to make it 1-0. And then after Vientos strikes out, a double from Acuna. Torrens would drive him in with a double to make it 2-0. The bottom of the second, the A's would respond themselves as Miguel Andujar would get an RBI single to make it 2-1. And then you fast forward a little bit as Griffin Canning got into trouble a lot, but did a good job working out. The Mets getting traffic on the base paths, but just not driving the run in, most notably in the third inning when they had 2 base runners with no outs and no runs to show for it. Then the fifth inning, after Juan Soto hits a single, Pete Alonso gets a double to make it a 3-1 game at that point. And then in the sixth inning, the Mets opened the floodgates a little bit. Alonso with a sac fly, Marte with a double, which made it 6-1. But the A's would, of course, make it a little bit of a challenge for the Mets as a RBI single for Jacob Wilson would make it 6-2. Miguel Andujar would hit a home run that would cut the lead to 6-4. But thankfully, Pete Alonso would hit a home run in the eighth inning to make it 7-4 to give the Mets a little bit of a safety blanket. And thank goodness he did, because Edwin Diaz bent but didn't break in that ninth inning. But it would have been a tie game without Pete Alonso hitting that home run, as Shea Langoliers had a double to make it 7-5, and then Bleday ended up making it 7-6. So a hectic game. Definitely not the sharpest that we've seen from this pitching staff. Griffin Canning, you look at the base stat line. Again, it's stuff that you expect from Canning. Like, we would sign up for Canning to give this type of stat line more times than not, just in terms of the innings pitched and even the runs, because you're in a spot with this offense where, all right, you should win the baseball game. But there's a lot of little things that, matter in the start. I did not love what Canning did in the start. I thought he left too much over the plate. His location was just not there at all. And even with the hard contact, it was definitely worrisome. I thought they pulled him too late as well, because there were warning signs in that fifth inning that you should have pulled him. And then they kind of let him, hit that wall there in that sixth inning. I get that they wanted volume, but I didn't love the idea to send him back out there. But yeah, overall, your thoughts on Canning's outing, because obviously we'll talk about Diaz after.
Yeah, I didn't love Canning's outing, and to be fair, like Griffin Canning so far through 3 games that he's started so far, like he's been solid. Like he's going out there, he's working, quote unquote, deeper into games than like what we originally expected. But this game, I didn't love. And listen, he went out there, he gave 5 1/3, and he gave up, I think, was it 4 earned runs or 3 earned runs?
Four earned.
Yeah, 4 earned runs. I didn't love the location of a lot of his pitches. Like this outing reminded me a lot of a prime David Peterson results man start, where he's getting the outs, he's getting the results, but he's leaving a lot of pitches over the plate, and he's leaving us pitches in positions where they're very hittable, and the A's were making a ton of hard contact, whether it was hard ground balls, hard line drives, hard fly balls to the outfield. Yeah, it wasn't great, and it was really weird to see, in total what pitches he was throwing, because this was pretty much the first time where, because if you look on Baseball Savant right now, again, the 3 main pitches that he did throw were the slider, four seamer, and changeup, but he pretty much threw all 3 pitches equally, and which is kind of weird because so far through Canning's first 2 starts or his first 3 starts. I forgot how many starts he made before this start, but
He
pretty
made
much
2
he's
starts
yeah,
before
2
this.
starts. He's gone a lot more slider heavy and more slider reliant. And today was and last game was the first time that he really threw all 3 pitches equally because he threw the slider 28 times, he threw the four seam 28 times, and he threw the changeup 27 times. So pretty much all of them were equal amounts. So it was weird to see that he went more four seam heavy than usual. I wonder just because of the results that he got last game and because of the hard contact that he made last game. I wonder if they do make a switch to more just more a slider heavy reliant on his arsenal. But I mean, listen, I didn't have a problem with sending Griffin Canning out for the 6th inning just because we know the problem that the Mets starters have had so far this year and not working deeper into games. And to be fair, this is actually the first time this season where the Mets actually got their starting pitchers work deep into games. Obviously, David Peterson would go 6 innings the next game, and then Senga, who we'll talk about later, threw a really good 7 shutout innings in the final game of the series. But yeah, I like I said, I didn't have a problem with sending Canning out for the 6th inning, but there definitely should have been more. Um,
A quicker hook.
there should have been a quicker hook from Mendy because obviously he gives up the double to Shea Langoliers. I still would have kept them in. He then makes the hard line out to JJ Bleday. You could have taken him out after there, but then after he gives up the single to Jacob Wilson, I think that's the time when you should have took out Griffin Canning because then obviously he gives up the 2-run home run to Miguel Andujar, and then obviously Reed Garrett comes in after that, and he wasn't the prime Reed Garrett that we've seen so far this year. He was a little bit shaky, because he did walk 2 guys, but he was still able to get out of that inning. So yeah, with Canning, I didn't love his outing just because, like I said, simply I thought he left way too many pitches over the heart of the plate to be hit hard. But he went out there, he gave you 5 1/3 innings, and ultimately he did enough. But I still think and we've said this a ton so far, and Frank even mentioned it yesterday on Mets Weekly. Make sure you guys check out their stream. I do think, and obviously this is going to happen when guys start to come back healthy, like Manaea Montas. Griffin Canning, his best role is going to be as a long man out of the bullpen, just simply because of the tools and the fact that you really can't push him beyond 5 innings. Because I understand why they tried to do it. Because like I said, you wanted length, and because he had a low pitch count that time. But it's clear to see that once Canning really gets through 5 innings, he really hits that wall. So I think for now you can kind of deal with him as a 5 inning starting pitcher, but I think once guys start to become healthy and guys come back, I think Canning moving into that long man role of the bullpen, I think that's when we're really going to start to see him thrive as that really valuable arm.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that point up if you didn't. That, we've been saying it for a while now that we think that the tools are better from the pen. We said it when they got him as well. Like, all right, you maybe have a really good long reliever in Griffin Canning here because the tools are just better for that. Unfortunately, with the circumstances that occurred with Montas and Manaea, they were left with no choice now but to throw him into the rotation and try to get volume out of him. And, like he's giving what I expect from Griffin Canning. But when you really only have 3 pitches that you're relying on, then you're not going to be able to get through the order as many times as you would like from Griffin Canning, maybe every once in a while, but it's not going to be easy. I'd like to see him utilize the cutter more. Like that's something that we talked about when they got Canning, that they need to really implement a good cutter for him to tunnel with the fastball. And we just aren't seeing him use it. Like he only threw one of them in that outing. And it's just bizarre to me that they're really not trying to maximize his tools a little bit more and get him to utilize all of those pitches that we were hoping that we'd see him develop. And maybe it's because they feel the same way we do, like, all right, just let him use the 3 pitches and we'll see what we could get, because either way he's probably going to be in the bullpen. But why not up the cutter usage and just see what works, because it can't hurt with the way that he's leaving stuff over the plate either way. And I think if anything, he would generate more swing and miss stuff. I could be wrong, but I would just like to see him utilize that cutter a little bit more, and maybe there's something there.
Yeah, I would like to see the cutter be utilized a bit more. I thought it looked fine for the amount of times that he was throwing it in spring training. I thought that was probably one of his better pitches, but I mean, obviously, also, I mean, for a guy like Kodai Senga, which I mentioned that we'll talk about him a little bit later, but the cutter is one of the pitches along with his fastball that's really working for Kodai Senga, and why he's really looked a lot better, especially in his last start. But I mean, yeah, I'm not sure why they're not letting him throw the cutter a bit more, but I don't know, maybe once he makes the switch to the bullpen and, they wanna give him that extra weapon, maybe they do want it, but I mean, look, so far he's been reliable, so I don't know. I guess we'll see, but I definitely would like to see the cutter used a bit more.
Yeah, which that will segue us into the definitely a conversation that is being discussed a lot on Mets Twitter, and that is, of course, none other than not the rest of the guys from the bullpen that look good, because Reed Garrett a little bit of trouble, still look good. Stanek looked great. Minter looked good. It comes down to though one Edwin Diaz that everyone is of course worried about, and rightfully so. I can't sit here and say that it's not it's not warranted because he was really shaky now for two consecutive outings. I will say that I definitely here are my thoughts overall with the DS thing. I think that the right move is to take him out of the closer spot for a bit and let him get into rhythm. And I said this in Mets Weekly Chat, and I know people don't love when I bring up hockey here, but I'm going to bring it up. He's similar to Igor Shesterkin in the way that you need to ease him in a little bit, and he's a guy that needs resets every single season. Like, that's just the nature of Edwin Diaz. And even if we look at some of the other outings where he put up scoreless innings, there was a lot of shakiness in those outings. Like, I look at the Blue Jays one when he faced the better part of the lineup, definitely a little bit shaky there. In Houston, didn't face a high leverage part of the order. So, there is context that matters here, that he hasn't looked that sharp all season long, to be completely honest with you. And his control has been all over the place. And that's really the big thing. And the velo being down definitely does, you know, concern me a bit because he is a two pitch guy and it's hard to get by when you're not throwing 102, 100, even with the fastball, even 98, 99. Like right now, he's sitting consistently at 96. And then, same with the slider too, which we saw touch 90, 91, 92 consistently. It's sitting more at like 87, 88 right now. It's hard to get by when you just have those two pitches and the velo's not there. And then on top of that, you add the fact that the control is not there. So at the very least, if the control was down pat, maybe it would help a little bit. So again, with the way Stanek is throwing from the pen and with the way that Garrett looks, I don't see the harm in letting Diaz get lesser spots when he comes in the games, letting him just find his control a little bit and maybe even dial up the velo a little bit, because we saw it last year too with Diaz. The velo was not there until the season progressed. So it's not something I'm worried about, but it's something that is, like with Soto, just frustrating because of the fact that you expect better from him. He is better than this. It's just that for right now, and it's unfortunate, he needs that reset that we see similarly with Igor with the Rangers. And it's a thing that happens every season, but you got to do with what you're dealt with. And, I don't think it's the worst thing considering how this bullpen has been to ease back on him a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, and this was something that I brought up too in in the group chat. I think it was either after the game or the day after. But yeah, for me personally, I take Diaz out of the closer role, and this is not as a punishment, but like you said, this is just as sort of like a mental reset to just get back, just to let him get back and find this rhythm. Because I know there is the concern with the velocity, but to be honest, like I don't think the lack of velocity is a huge issue with him, just because I still think that he could be a reliable closer, only averaging about 96, 97 mile an hour on his fastball. And look, I don't think he's lost his velocity like as a whole, because we've seen him. I think because even yeah, it's said that his hardest his hardest fastball that he threw last game was 98.9 miles an hour. So he still can reach that type of velocity. It's just right now it seems that he just can't hit it at a consistent level. But I definitely do agree. I think for now with other guys so far pitching well right now, you have Stanek, you have Minter, you have Kranick, guys like that. I would just take him out of the closers role for now and just let him because as I said, I don't think it's a velocity issue. I think it's just more of a control issue because overall, I mean, his slider control has been fine. It's just the fastball control, and I mean, like we've said it plenty of times. Carson mentioned it on the podcast yesterday that they did on Mets Weekly. You can really tell what type of Edwin Diaz outing it's going to be just on the way the first pitch is thrown. Because if it's close to the zone, you know that you're going to have a reliable Edwin Diaz, and if it's far out of the zone, you're like, okay, buckle up. It's gonna be a rough and nervous outing tonight. And I mean that's what happened with Lawrence Butler because Lawrence Butler came up as the first hitter in that bottom of the ninth, and Edwin Diaz threw 4 balls out of the zone that weren't even close. And I mean right now he's looking like 2017 to 2019 Jerry Familia with how he's just locating his pitches right now. But yeah, I mean for right now I would just take him out of the closers role, let him rework and refine his mechanics, let him get back on track. Because I mean, even we saw it last year. Like we saw something very similar to last year, where Diaz just couldn't find his location, and like you mentioned with the velocity, because the velocity was down last year too. But after a while, where he was able to work on things, he got back into a rhythm. Then we start to see the Edwin Diaz that we saw of a couple years ago. And I think the big thing is that people have to realize because I think a lot of the big things that people are worrying about Diaz is they're worrying that we're never going to see 29 or they're holding him to the standard of 2022 Edwin Diaz. And I get that because that Edwin Diaz, it was so fun to watch him that year where he was just out there and he just dominated every single time he went out there. But people just have to realize, come to the fact that we're never going to see 2022 Edwin Diaz ever again. Like that
No.
was such a special year that he had, and he was just that dominant. Like people just have to realize that 2022 Edwin Diaz is gone, but Edwin Diaz as a reliable relief pitcher in this league, like there is still a reliable pitcher in there. He just is just like you said, like he just for some reason he has to have a mental reset like Igor Shesterkin. And I think once he figures it out and he gets the mechanics down, I think he'll be fine. It's just for now, just take him out of the closer role.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and like, yeah, I'm agreeing with Brian. It's just like the control is just so inconsistent. You know, from the first pitch, how an Edwin Diaz outing is gonna go. You just know, unfortunately, and who would you use for the closer if you took him out? Stanek or Garrett right now, or a split type thing, like depending on who's available or not. That's what I would do because Stanek with that slider that he's been throwing, he looks fucking great right now. Like he looks so much better than last year right now that I'd be comfortable with him closing games because he has that extra tool in the toolbox now. And Reed Garrett, he's been really just disgusting. And I know he had a shaky outing in this game, but I would be fine with both of them just again to ease Diaz into it. We saw Garrett close also last year too, so at least there's that experience there where he's pitched in the high leverage spots. But yeah, it's something that I'm not hitting the panic button on just yet because I agree with you that the truth is somewhere in the middle with Diaz. He is not 2019 bad, but he's not 2022 elite like Mariano Rivera-esque season. And I know Yankee fans that watch me are gonna be like, "How dare you compare anyone to fucking Mo?" But he was that good in 2022. Like every time he came into the game, you knew they were shutting the door. And the only time he really allowed runs that year was when it was lower leverage spots. Like that was really it. There's something in between here with Diaz for sure. And we have to just adjust expectations, I think, with him. And I get that it's infuriating because he's making the money he is. And I'm not disagreeing that he is overpaid. Like he is overpaid for his position, but he's here and all we could do is just adjust expectations accordingly, and that's really about it. As for the offense in this game though, Pete Alonso, great day for him, going 3 for 3. The thing that irked me though Um, and this kind of segues into game two a little bit. Uh, but I'll let you, of course, give your thoughts on the offense first before we segue fully into game two. Acuna goes 2 for 4 and then doesn't play the next day, which was bizarre to me. He had a very good day. Juan Soto ended up getting that hit. Marte in the cleanup spot in 2025 made me want to vomit, but credit to him. He did have that huge hit to get 2 RBIs there. So, and then Brandon Nimmo, too, of course, with a very solid day at the plate. So, again, similar to what we've seen, they benefited off some A's errors as well. But again, nice to see at least them, make the A's pay for the mistakes they made in the field.
Yeah, and obviously it was nice to see Pete Alonso again. He had another big game. I know he kind of struggled this last two game of the series. He went 0 for 8 after the big first game that he had, but was still nice to see him have that big first game where he hit a home run. Juan Soto obviously went 1 for 4. Lindor went 0 for 5. Marte, we didn't love seeing him in the cleanup spot, but went 1 for 5, had a big RBI hit. Brandon Nimmo, obviously nice to see him hit the home run. I will say this though about the offense, and the offense was still frustrating to watch this series. But the one thing I did like were I thought the ABs were a lot better in terms of actually working up the pitch count because I thought they really did a good job at working up JP Sears' pitch count. I think because he only pitched about like 4 innings that game, they did a good job working up Sevy's pitch count in the last game. Uh, they did a decent job on JT Ginn as well, but overall, like I said, I love the fact that they were working pitch counts and making the opposing pitchers work, but still did not love seeing them, not being able to lacking in terms of the big hit department, but hopefully that does turn around. But yeah, I think we can move and go to the second game now.
Yeah, so let's segue into that just because this was a very, very frustrating game. And this kind of files up to what we've said all season long that all of these losses are just, they're so winnable. It just, the offense just never gives enough in these losses at all. Like the pitching keeps them in. But again, let's talk about it. So there was an error that got Lindor on in that first inning. To no surprise, the Mets don't drive him in. They get traffic on the bases in the second inning with a Mark Vientos single. Again, nothing happens there. And then of note there in that inning, Jose Siri got hurt pretty bad on a foul ball. We'll wait and see if he's going to go on the IL. Apparently, a decision will be made today, but he was on crutches. So I have a feeling that he's probably going on the IL if I had to take a guess there. But Tyrone Taylor came into the game at that point. The third inning, you have 2 walks after Senja grounds out, and then the Mets just don't capitalize at all. The third inning, good work, by the way, from Peterson, just all around until it got ugly in that fourth inning after, again, the Mets did get a hit from Brett Beatty, but nothing to show for it outside of that. The fourth inning, those where Peterson faced trouble. Jacob Wilson gets a double. Brent Rooker flies out. Soderstrom with a single. Langoliers gets one. Andujar gets one. Bleday ends up getting a ground out, which made it 2-0. And then there was a catcher's interference. So a really ugly inning there for the Mets. Brandon Nimmo in the 6th inning would get a solo shot. And that would really be all for the offense for the Mets because, again, there were times they were getting traffic on the bases, just not doing enough. And then this game was pretty much done when Budo came in and Muncy got that single. And then Peretta got that double to make it 3-1. The 9th inning, they showed a little bit of promise with 2 outs after Taylor got that single. And Torrens, I thought, maybe got a hold of one to pull opposite field off of Mason Miller, but unfortunately not. So, yeah, again, the offense didn't show up. And David Peterson didn't give the greatest outing. It wasn't the worst, but the thing that I have to ask, and I'm asking this question, I feel like at least once a series, where is Hefner? Where is Hefner in that 4th inning? Somebody flash the Hef signal because where is he too busy with the paparazzi in the dugout? Because is he too famous for mound visits? Again, you don't get fined, and he just always waits for the damage to be done to go out to the mound. Your pitcher is struggling. Where are you? Why is it always the catcher that has to initiate the mound visits? Why is it always Lindor initiating mound visits? Where are you, Hefner? I didn't love, similar to Canning with Peterson. I didn't love the location that of Peterson's pitches in this outing. He wasn't terrible. He put them in a position where they, again, like he did what he did. He gets results. He put them in a spot to win the game. Gave 6 innings as well. Budo, he's been shaky lately, but it allows that run. But still, this offense, I mean, 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position, just not enough havoc on the bases, and no hits from your top three is just not good enough.
Yeah, with Peterson, I thought he was all right. Like, I agree with you. I didn't love the location of some of his pitches, but I thought he did a pretty good job at mixing up his pitch count because, I mean, pretty much he did a solid job at pretty much throwing each pitch at least like pretty much an even amount. Sinker 27 times he threw, slider 19 times, curveball 16 times, four seamer 14 times, changeup 13 times. So I thought he was solid. I mean, obviously 6 innings you love to see because like we talked about, the one big thing with the Mets pitching staff was they haven't gone deep in the games. And so far at before Senga went out there in the final game and went 7 innings, Peterson was the only pitcher at that time to, at least throw 6 innings. So good to see that at least he's done it twice this season, and hopefully he can keep on doing it. 5 strikeouts I did like. I mean, pretty much. I mean, it was like a prototypical David Peterson start where he's giving up contact, but the defense is playing well behind him and getting outs. It was just really that fourth inning that really got him into trouble. And I agree with you that Hefner's got to go out there quicker and at least limit damage control because I don't know for some reason he just loves to wait till shit hits the fan before he goes out there. But I mean, I think you also got to give credit to the A's hitters because I mean, the A's right now. I mean, listen, they're not the greatest team in the American League, but they're a young, feisty, gritty team, and even I think Gary and Ron brought this up because when you're watching Peterson earlier on in the in his outing, he was throwing a lot of pitches in the strike zone, and the A's were really just laying off those pitches and not really and not really swinging and not taking big chances on those pitches. And then really the fourth inning is when you saw them make the adjustment and they really start to ambush David Peterson and really start to make hard contact off him. And wow, you're the offensive approach and plate approach changing mid game. I wish we had a hitting coach that would have that, but it is what it is at the end of the day. But I mean, yeah, and then pretty much because I mean he gives up the double to Jacob Wilson, gets Rooker to fly out, and then the 3 singles in a row to Soderstrom, Shea Langoliers, and Duhar, and then obviously does get out of the inning eventually. So other than that fourth inning, I thought Peterson was solid, and then like you mentioned, Budo comes in, gives up the run. He was a bit shaky, but was able to get through it as well, and it just again disappointed from the offense because even though the pitching wasn't like great, they were still solid enough to the point where if your pitching staff is holding the A's to 3 runs, you expect your offense to come through with at least 4 or 5 runs in winning that game. I mean, the ninth inning, they were close. Obviously, anytime Mason Miller goes out there, and Mason Miller's just a freaking cheat code. I mean, when he's going out there and he's just dotting you up with 103-mile-an-hour fastballs, it's like what can you do at that point? But I mean, to be credit, because after Vientos, gets out and Beatty gets called on strikes, Tyrone Taylor puts together a nice at bat. He was able to single, and then Luis Torrens, who's again had a really good series, had the big hit in the first game of the series that drove in a run, came up big in the finale of the series as well. And he almost hit a home run to opposite field that almost tied up the game. It's just unfortunate, just one foul. And then put together a good at bat, but ultimately just grounded out the to end of that game. So yeah, just unfortunate. Like I said, I thought the pitching was fine in that game, but your offense has to be a lot better.
Yeah. It's just it's just infuriating that like I get that you need production from the top of the order there. It would be nice though if the bottom of the lineup could maybe once be the reason they win a game. Like, could we try that for just the game? Maybe. Apparently not. And yeah, the cart running out of gas was funny, and then them trying to push it back like a bunch of idiots. Um, and it's Starry Marte, by the way, going 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. My patience is just gone with Marte. I'm just so over the guy. I know he had the big hit in the first game, but I just have no patience for him anymore. Like, I can't wait for this team to have a real DH. But Do you have anything else to talk about with game two? Because I really don't have anything else.
Now we can move on to the finale.
All right, so let's talk about the third and final game here. Definitely similar to a game from last year because of the reasons that I've laid out pretty much all live stream, where the offense pisses us off and then they go off out of nowhere because there was that leadoff walk from Lindor, and then there was that fielder's choice that got Juan Soto on because of the error there, which would have been a double play. And once again, the Mets do nothing to drive the runner in. Kodai Senga, though, nice to see him in the first inning after allowing that leadoff double. He was locked in after that because he gave not only a great outing, but it was nice to see him in the first inning go without any damage. The second inning, there was a hit from Torrens. They don't do anything with it. The third inning, they go down in order. And then in the fourth inning, this is where I thought the game was over. When Brandon Nimmo had the double and Torrens had the walk, you have two guys on. And then, of course, Brett Baty comes up, strikes out, looking like a child at the plate, like always. I was like, they're not winning this game because it's the same thing where they just aren't getting the big hit. But then it changed in the sixth inning as Alonso got the leadoff walk. And thankfully, after 2 outs, Torrens gets a single to make it 1-0. Then in the seventh inning, the Mets opened the floodgates a little bit there as Taylor gets hit by a pitch. Lindor would drive him in with an RBI double. Vientos would walk in a run to make it 3-0. And then the eighth inning, you had Taylor get a triple. A balk would score him. I would have liked a little more damage that inning, but didn't get it. The ninth inning, though, is where we really got the damage here as a Brandon Nimmo single. Mark Vientos with a double made it 5-0. Torrens with a double made it 6-0. Baty with a triple, doing his Chris Kreider impression here, 7-0 Mets. And then Tyrone Taylor reaches on base with an error, and that made it 8-0. And then Max Kranick shuts the door there. Really good stuff from the pitching in this game. Kodai Senga was unbelievable. The forkball was absolutely beautiful from him, and the fastball velo being up, just unbelievable. Mixing that with the cutter, the way that he was tunneling those two pitches just absolutely worked, and it made the forkball tough to lay off as well. So really great outing. Even though the strikeout stuff wasn't there, he was nails, and it was ace level stuff from him, in my opinion. Minter, good inning out of the bullpen. Kranick, good inning, but yeah, your thoughts on Senga and the pitching before we talk about this offense?
Senga was excellent. I mean, I really enjoyed, because we haven't really because obviously Senga, was solid in his one start that he had last year against the Braves before he got hurt and before he strained his calf. But this really reminded me of 2023 Senga through like the middle of the season because he just had excellent stuff and he had ace level stuff. I mean, like you said, he really did a good job with his three main pitches of the four seam, cutter, and fork ball. Through the four seamer 23 times, cutter 21 times, fork ball 18 times, and you really love the swing and miss stuff of the fork ball. Like I said, threw it 18 times, got 10 swings, got 6 whiffs on it. But the one thing that I really loved from Senga was his four seamer velocity was up there. And a lot of the big problems that I had with Senga's fastball in his first couple starts of the season was earlier on, especially in the first inning where he was giving up runs, getting into trouble. His fastball velo was down at about like 94, 93 miles an hour. But the good thing with Senga's fastball today was, he was really because right now his yearly average was about 94.8, and he was sitting at about 96 mile an hour on his fastball, and even topped out at 97.6 mile an hour, 97.6 mile an hour on the fastball. So great to see that Senga, those three main pitches, and like I said, he really did a good job at tunneling his pitches with the four seamer and then the cutter, and then as I said, with the forkball, getting a tons of swings and misses on it. Obviously, when you look at the final line, 7 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, which I really like that Senga was able, to limit the walks. You would love to see more than 4 strikeouts, but still, he was getting a ton of, light contact on the ground in the air as well. So I thought he just did a really good job. And as I mentioned as well, the one thing that we talked about, a ton so far in the season was that the Mets stars need to start going deeper into games. And Senga, listen, if it wasn't for the the pitch limit that he's on right now, he probably could have, gone at least 8 innings or even thrown gone the full nine and thrown a complete game shutout. But listen, I still like the fact that, they're going with him on the pitch limit because, you want to rest his arm, you want to keep him healthy, especially, later down the line. Obviously, we'll see what happens now, considering that the Mets don't have a lot of off days coming up. So we'll see how they handle the rotation. If, they skip Senga's turn in the rotation one time, or if they call up someone and run with the six-man rotation. Obviously, that's something that we will have to see. But yeah, I love Senga's start so far, and this is the type of Kodai Senga that we need to see, especially with Manai on the shelf right now until late May, early June. We really need a guy to step up and be the quote unquote ace on the staff. And if Senga's going to continue this type of outing, then and then you add a guy like Shaman later down the line, and maybe you trade for another big time ace. This pitching staff is going to be really dangerous, and it's really going to be one of the top rotations in baseball. Just with the way they're going out there, they're pitching well deep into games, getting results, getting just going out there and winning games. So yeah, I loved what I saw from Sega. And then obviously, like you said, from the offensive side, it was more of the same. Through the first 6 innings, they really couldn't get anything going. And then obviously, you get to the sixth inning and, Pete Alonso walks. Luis Torrens then comes through with a big time single. And then obviously, Lindor has a double in the seventh inning. Mark Vientos then with a really good at bat when the base is loaded, draws a walk, gets up to 3-0. And then obviously they eventually exploded in the eighth inning where they put up another run, and then the ninth inning where they just unload and they put up 4 more runs in the A's. And yeah, and then obviously Max Kranick comes in. I was a little surprised at first that Kranick was coming in, just because I thought it was 8-0. I thought that would be the perfect time to use a guy like Danny Young just to get through an inning. But I do understand why they use Kranick, just because he hadn't pitched at that point in that series, and the last time he did pitch was the finale of the Marlins series. So it had been a couple days, so they wanted to get in some work from him. And again, Max Kranick looking like Max Kranick. Fastball was good, slider, sweeper was good, and then also AJ Minter before him, he came in, and again, Minter looked really good with his fastball and cutter. So yeah, a good solid win to wrap up that series.
Yeah. Again, too, like I've said in my post game, you look at 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position, and they did benefit a lot off of errors as well from the A's. But, a lot still left on the table there for them to really go off offensively. So there's just still so much that I want to see from this offense on a consistent basis. And really, most importantly, an identity like we touched on earlier. And, this series really got me to start to open my eyes a little bit more with all of this stuff. So we'll see how things progress though as they play the Twins next. But yeah, do you have any other thoughts with this series before we segue on to the final, or yeah, our final discussion with the series coming up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just as a whole wrap up for the series. Look, I get that there's still like a ton of concerns here with guys in the bullpen, especially Edwin Diaz, with the offense in general, just not driving in guys so far. And statistically, the Mets are right now one of the worst teams in baseball, in terms of hitting with runs, scoring position. But I think like we've always said, and we said this with the Rangers, it's fair to have concerns, but I think the one big thing between the Mets and the Rangers of why I'm a bit more calmer with the Mets is just the whole I trust the Mets so much more than the Rangers. And a
Yeah.
big part is because I trust the star players a lot more. And the ultimately the big part is that I trust David Stearns to go out there and sees, and if he sees that there's a problem, I trust that he's going to go out there and he's going to address that problem. And look, the big thing is, like, we all have to remember that it's baseball. This is a long season. Like, after this month, we still have 5 more months of baseball after this. We're only 15 games into a 162 game season. So while the team definitely has some concerns right now, there's still a ton of time, and the product is going to look, so much more different from where we are right now to where we're at the end of the season. Because I mean, like, just take a look back at a year ago, like where we were. Like, take a look at where the Mets were 15 games last year. Like, that team at that point looked totally different to where that team, finished the season and made the playoffs and made the deep run in the NLCS. So, like I said, it is definitely fair to have the concerns because, and this has been a yearly thing with the Mets, especially under Eric Chavez, where the offense hasn't been great. But the one thing with me is I trust the front office. I trust a guy like David Stearns to go out there and make the necessary changes to make this team a much better team than it is right now. So still early. The concerns are fair, but I think right now we just got to enjoy this team and just take it game by game, take it series by series, and I'm right now. I mean, compare this to the Rangers. I'm enjoying pretty much every game that we're watching right now. Even the games where the offense is driving us crazy, and we just want them to score runs at a consistent rate. But we got to remember, it's baseball at the end of the day. It's a long ass season.
Yeah. I agree there. Like, just keep winning series, but the offense definitely at some point,
Yeah.
we gotta see something because if we're not seeing anything, like if we're in May, June talking about the same things, then even if they have a good record, that's where I'm gonna start to say, okay, even if the record's good, how sustainable is this going down the stretch? But time will tell there. So
And I
yeah,
mean, for me, like as of right now, I think the biggest thing for me, especially early in the season, is just rack up wins, get wins, win series, and you don't have to play the best brand of baseball right now. Obviously, like you mentioned, if we're still seeing the same things in May, June, and July, there will definitely be some concerns, as we saw with the 2022 Mets, because we had a ton of concerns with that team, and eventually we were proven to be correct. Once they got into the playoffs, but as of right now, like we said, just win games, win series, rack up wins, and improve the brand of baseball as we get deeper into the season.
yeah. And with that being said, they take on the Twins starting tonight in terms of the pitching matchups there, which this sucks because of the fact that there are no off days, which means, come the next series with the Cardinals, which we'll talk about obviously next episode, Senga would have to pitch on regular rest, or we're going to find out who the sixth starter is going to be. But in terms of this series, Clay Holmes will get the first game going against Joe Ryan. Tyler McGill versus Bailey Ober in the second game. The ace off we didn't know he needed, and then Griffin Canning versus David Festa in the third game. This Twins team has been struggling quite a bit. Their leader in home runs is former Met Harrison Bader, actually. And like Brian said, he's either going to turn the bonds or go hitless. I would probably go with the latter on that one because that's just how this goes, right? But yeah, this is a struggling Twins team. They are off to a really bad start with 5 wins on the season. And I hate to call sweep, but I'm going with a sweep in the series. I think that, you know, this is one that you got to take advantage of. You at least have to take 2 out of 3 against a struggling Twins team where their leading offensive performer right now is, like I said, Harrison Bader in terms of the long ball, and Ty France right now, who's off to a good start. This is a team that you got to take advantage of while they are not playing their best baseball because this team's definitely underachieving given how much talent they have. Hopefully, this isn't the series that wakes them up. But yeah, I'm going to go with a sweep in this series.
Yeah, I mean, like as you said, definitely the Twins are off to a rough start. I mean, you take a look at their top guys. I mean, Ty France right now is one of their best hitters right now with an 811 OPS. Obviously, you mentioned Harrison Bader leading the team in home runs with 3. Credit to my guy Harrison LeBader. We miss you over here on the side of Queens, but yeah, I mean when you take a look at some of their other guys too, Carlos Correa 488 OPS, Byron Buxton 673 OPS, Matt Wallner who I like 778 OPS. He's doing solid, but yeah, definitely the Twins are underperforming. And I mean, right now, like we mentioned, Clay Holmes on the mound today against Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan so far, he's been solid, solid overall pitcher. Then obviously you have McGill against Bailey Ober, who's struggled so far with the 7.11 ERA so far, and then the finale with Canning and David Fest on the mound. I would love a sweep, but I'll go conservative here. I'll say they take 2 out of 3. I'll say they'll win tonight. They'll take the second game, and then they'll lose the finale with Canning on the mound.
All right. So hopefully, I end up being correct here with my prediction, but we will see. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live on the channel here. And we'll see you guys in the next one.